Hello friends, I'm here to tell you a relaxing story which leads you to sleep with sweet dreams. Let's start with Chapter 1, A Rainy Day. Chapter 1, The first drop the morning began in silence. Not the kind of silence that feels empty or forgotten, but the kind that hums softly in the background like a lullaby half remembered from childhood. The town of Willowmere lay tucked beneath a gray woolen sky, its rooftops still glistening with dew, and its cobbled streets quiet as if the world had taken a long, slow breath. Inside a small, ivy-draped cottage at the edge of the village, a boy named Eliah stirred beneath his quilt. He was neither very young nor very old, just in that in-between age where dreams still felt close enough to touch, and the world, though wide, hadn't yet grown sharp. Eliah blinked slowly, rubbed his eyes, and sat up in bed. Something felt different. The air was cooler, gentler, almost as though it were holding its breath. Then he heard it. Tap! A single raindrop kissed the glass of his window. Tap, tap. Then another, and another. He padded across the wooden floor in bare feet, quilt still wrapped around his shoulders, and peered outside. The sky above Willowmere had turned the color of pearl, soft and pale, and mist curled between the houses like sleepy ghosts. Rain had begun to fall, slowly, carefully, like a careful hand dusting sugar over the town, and just like that, everything changed. The garden below his window shimmered, each leaf slick with silver. The air smelled of wet earth and green things, of something old, comforting and deep. Raindrops raced each other down the panes, and Eliah, with a small smile, pressed his forehead to the cool glass. He loved days like this. Rainy days were soft days, gentle days, days where you didn't have to hurry or talk too much or do anything but listen and dream. Eliah tiptoed downstairs where the fire had gone out, but the warmth lingered. He lit a single candle, made a cup of chamomile tea the way his grandmother had taught him, steeped for just the right amount of time, with honey and a whisper of cinnamon, and curled up in the window seat. Outside, the world was a painting in motion. The trees swayed in rhythm with the drizzle, and puddles formed in the garden path like tiny lakes. He watched as a squirrel scampered under a bench, and a tabby cat took shelter beneath the eaves. Everything was slower in the rain. Everything was softer, and Eliah liked that. He reached into the bookshelf beside the window and pulled out a small leather-bound journal. Its pages were worn and smelled of ink and pine. It was where he wrote his thoughts on days like these, little poems, dreams, and stories that had no beginning or end. He dipped his pen and began. The rain has come to hush the world, to bathe the leaves and kiss the earth, to tell the sky to close its eyes and dream of all the things it's worth. As he wrote, a sense of stillness settled into his bones, the kind of stillness that feels sacred, like standing inside a song. He closed his eyes for a moment, letting the rhythm of the rain play like music through the cottage. Tap, 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 tap. It was then, right between the sound of a drop on the windowsill and the creak of the old floorboards, that Eliah felt something. It was small at first. A tug, a whisper, a hush behind the hush. Something was calling to him. He didn't know why or how, only that he suddenly wanted to walk in the rain. Not to get somewhere, not to do something, just to be in it, to feel it on his skin, to listen. So he stood quietly and made his way to the coat rack by the door. He reached for his old green cloak, the one with the wooden buttons and the little stitched fox on the sleeve. But as he went to pull it down, his eyes landed on something else, a dusty umbrella leaning against the far corner, worn with a curved wooden handle and faded navy fabric. Eliah blinked. He hadn't seen it in years. It had belonged to his grandmother, Mira. She had always said it wasn't just an umbrella, it was a key to all the quiet places rain could take you. He remembered her voice. Rainy days, Eliah, are not for hiding, they're for listening. The rain has secrets to share if your heart is soft enough to hear them. He picked it up. It felt familiar in his hand, warm even, as though it remembered him. Eliah stepped outside. The rain greeted him like an old friend, cool on his cheeks, soft in his hair. He opened the umbrella with a satisfying swamp, and the world beneath its canopy became a little private cocoon, filled with the scent of wood and water and old stories. The path ahead was damp and dappled, winding gently through the village and out toward the meadows beyond. He walked slowly. Each footstep splashed just a little, the mud welcoming but not clinging. The trees above whispered to each other, their leaves heavy with raindrops, bowing slightly as he passed. It felt like everything was watching. not in a frightening way, but in a kind, curious way. Like the world was holding its breath, waiting for something to unfold. He passed Mrs. Bellamy's bakery, where the scent of warm bread drifted through the shutters. He saw Mr. Pilksbury tending to his front garden under a wide-brimmed hat, humming an old tune. Everyone, it seemed, had their own rainy day ritual, but Eliah kept walking, past the village, past the picket fences and the bramble hedges, until the ground turned soft and wild, and the trees began to grow closer together. He didn't know where he was going. He just knew he had to follow the feeling, and the feeling was leading him toward the willow trees. The willows stood like quiet guardians at the edge of the forest, their long branches cascading like curtains of silk. They swayed gently in the breeze, trailing their fingers through the puddles below, whispering secrets only the trees could understand. Eliah paused as he approached them. He had walked past these trees many times before, but today something felt different. The space between their trunks looked darker, deeper, as though it stretched farther than it ever had. The rain that fell here was quieter, more delicate, like it was holding back. He stepped forward. A shiver passed over him, not from the cold, but from something else, something stirring. As he passed beneath the first willow, the world seemed to hush. The sound of the village faded behind him, replaced by the gentle chorus of dripping leaves and distant birdsong. Each step he took felt softer than the last, as if the ground itself was welcoming him in. There was a small path hidden beneath the willow branches, winding and narrow and just wide enough for a boy with an old umbrella and a wandering heart. Eliah followed it. He didn't know how long he walked. Time, like everything else in this part of the woods, seemed to forget itself. The deeper he went, the more the world around him changed. The light filtered through layers of green turned a dusky gold. Moss-covered stones peeked through the earth, and small, sleepy mushrooms leaned in clusters by tree roots. The rain had grown even lighter now, almost like mist, and it hung in the air like breath. Eliah slowed. Ahead of him, just beyond a curve in the path, was a strange shimmer in the air. Not a light, not a sound, more like a ripple, as though the rain itself had parted ever so slightly to reveal something hiding behind it. Eliah took one more step, and that was when he saw it, a small wooden archway grown over with ivy and carved with symbols he didn't recognize. It wasn't large or grand, but it felt ancient, like it had stood there for hundreds of years, waiting patiently for someone to find it. And beneath the archway, a garden. Not a wild forest garden, not a tended one either, but something in between. The flowers here glowed softly as if kissed by starlight. Strange plants with curling leaves opened and closed like breathing. Tiny silver birds darted between branches, leaving trails of sparkle in their wake. The trees arched protectively overhead, and at the very center of it all stood a stone fountain where the rain seemed to fall in reverse, dripping upward into the sky. Eliah's breath caught in his throat. It was beautiful, unreal, like a half-remembered dream or a song he'd heard long ago but couldn't name. The umbrella drooped in his hand as he stepped beneath the archway and into the garden. The air here was warmer, thicker. It smelled like lavender and old wood, and the rain, though it still fell gently all around, never quite touched him. It was as if the very air was enchanted. He wandered slowly, eyes wide, heart quiet. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. Everything here was speaking already. In the way the wind stirred the petals, the way the grass bowed slightly as he passed, the way the rain moved sideways through the leaves. Then he heard it, a whisper, very faint, almost too faint, but it was there. At first he thought it might be the wind, or a trick of the rain, but no, there were words there, just beneath the surface. He closed his eyes and listened. A follow the hush, follow the hush. It came like a breeze across his thoughts, not loud or demanding, just there, kind, soft, inviting. He opened his eyes and turned slowly in a circle. Just beyond a patch of tall bluebell flowers stood a narrow gate, half covered in vines. It looked as if it hadn't been used in years, but Eliah could feel it. Something pulling him toward it, something waiting. He approached the gate, brushed aside the vines and gently pushed it open. A creak echoed softly through the garden. Beyond the gate was a path lined with glowing stones, and at the very end of it stood a tiny cottage, round-roofed and thatched with smoke curling from the chimney and yellow light glowing in the windows. Eliah's heart fluttered. There was someone here, Someone who lived in the rain. Chapter 2, Whispers in the Rain. The cottage looked like it had grown straight out of the earth. Its walls were made of smooth river stone, each one a different shape, polished by time and rain. Moss curled gently around the windowsills, and a tiny lantern swayed from a hook by the door, its flame never quite flickering in the breeze. Ivy reached up along the sides like nature's lace, and above it all, a patchwork roof of moss, wood, and straw seemed to hum in harmony with the drizzle. Eliah stood at the edge of the path for a moment, watching the little chimney puff soft clouds into the gray sky. Something in his chest, somewhere between his heart and breath, felt warm. Still, the umbrella dripped quietly at his side. Then with a breath he stepped forward. As he reached the door, he raised his hand to knock. But before he could, the door creaked open all by itself. The warm scent of dried herbs, old parchment, and wood smoke drifted out. Eliah blinked, and for the first time he hesitated, but then he heard it again. That same whisper, like a memory hidden in mist. Come in, Eliah." The voice was soft, not spoken aloud, yet clear as anything he'd ever heard. He stepped inside, the warmth wrapped around him like a blanket. The cottage was small but filled with light, soft and golden, flickering from dozens of candles placed in little glass jars and teacups along shelves and ledges. Books lined the walls, stacked in every nook. There were bundles of lavender and rosemary hanging from the ceiling, jars of dried petals, and curious trinkets resting on every surface, stones, feathers, bits of colored glass, old keys, and carved wooden animals. And in the center of it all, sitting in a rocking chair beside a quiet fire, was the rainkeeper. She was old, not in the way of wrinkles and slowness, but in the way trees are old, in the way rivers remember. Her hair was silver and curled like clouds, and her eyes shimmered a soft blue like the sky after a storm. She wore a long robe the color of rain-drenched leaves, and her hands, though delicate, looked like they'd planted every flower in the world. She looked up and smiled. "Hello, dear one." Eliah opened his mouth, but no sound came out at first. None. It didn't mean to intrude, he finally managed. "Oh, you didn't," she said, waving one hand gently. "The rain brought you. It always knows who's ready." Eliah furrowed his brow. Ready for what? Ready for what? She smiled again and nodded toward a small wooden stool beside the fire. Sit. The rain has stories to tell you." Eliah sat, feeling the heat from the fire seep into his skin. The rainkeeper poured him a cup of tea from a kettle that looked far older than any he'd seen before. The tea smelled of rain itself, earthy, fresh, and mysterious. He sipped, and something inside him opened like a window no one knew was there. The rainkeeper watched him with eyes that saw everything. "You've heard it, haven't you?" she asked quietly. Whispers. Eliah nodded slowly. "The garden in the air. It speaks to those who listen," she said. "Few do." He looked into the fire, the flames dancing like candlelight on a puddle. "What is it saying?" She took a breath, long and slow, like she was drawing it from the very walls. "It says, remember." Eliah frowned. "Remember what?" She leaned back in her chair, hands folded. "And not all memories are our own. Some belong to the world, some to the rain. It keeps them safe. Every tear shed, every laugh shared beneath the storm, every wish whispered into the clouds. It holds them, and when the time is right, it returns them." She looked at him carefully. "And I believe you've forgotten something important." Eliah felt a strange tug in his chest, like a thread being pulled gently from within. "I don't know what it is." "You will," she said. "The rain will show you." They sat in silence for a while, listening to the gentle patter on the roof. Outside the window, the garden glowed softly, and every droplet seemed to shimmer with memory. Then the rainkeeper stood. "There's something I want you to see." She reached into a drawer and pulled out a small, clear jar. Inside was a single raindrop, suspended, unmoving, glowing faintly with blue light. "This," she said, "is a memory drop." Eliah leaned closer, fascinated. "Whose memory is it?" She smiled. "Let's find out." She handed it to him, and the moment his fingers touched the glass, the world around him melted away. He was standing in a field of tall grass. The sky above was golden with sunlight, and the wind was warm and full of laughter. In the distance, he saw a woman young with the same silver blue eyes as the rainkeeper, twirling in the rain, arms wide, singing. A child ran to her, laughing barefoot, wild with joy. Eliah's breath caught. It was him. He was small, younger than he remembered being. And he was laughing like he'd never forgotten how. The woman lifted him into the air, spinning in circles. The rain, she whispered, is where our joy goes to rest and where our sorrow is washed clean. He looked up at her. Will it ever stop raining? She shook her head gently. Only when we've remembered everything we were meant to feel, then the memory faded. The cottage returned. Eliah was still holding the jar, but the drop inside it had turned clear, its glow gone. He looked at the rainkeeper wide-eyed. That was my mother. She nodded. You'd forgotten. Tears filled his eyes. I don't know why. I didn't mean to. Sometimes the heart protects itself by hiding the things it's not ready to feel, she said softly. But the rain, it keeps them safe for us. Eliah wrapped his hands around the warm teacup and let the tears fall. The rainkeeper didn't say anything more. She just let him feel. Let him listen to the whispers. Let him remember. Outside, the rain began to grow heavier, not stormy, not angry, just full, as if the clouds themselves were remembering something beautiful. Eliah sat quietly for a long time. He didn't rush the tears. He didn't fight the ache in his chest or the way the rain outside seemed to echo his heartbeat. He just did. The rainkeeper too remained silent, tending gently to the fire, occasionally adding a twig or two that popped and crackled with comforting rhythm. Her presence was like a soft blanket, never smothering, never demanding, only there. At last, Eliah looked up. I didn't even know I missed her that much, he said, voice low. She's not gone, the rainkeeper replied, folding her hands in her lap. No one truly is, not if they've ever loved or been loved. Eliah sniffled and rubbed his nose. You said the rain keeps memories. It does. But not just any memories. The ones that matter, the ones you're afraid to lose. It gathers them, cradles them like sleeping birds, and when the time is right, it gives them back. She gestured to the window where the world outside blurred through the glass. Every drop is a story. Eliah turned to look, watching the way the rain caught the candlelight dancing like silver threads against the window pane. And then why do people hate rainy days? He asked. The rainkeeper chuckled softly, a sound like rustling pages. Because they don't remember what rain really is. They see gray skies and forget how green the earth becomes after. She stood moving toward a tall wooden cabinet with dozens of tiny drawers. Each was labeled in an elegant swirling script. Wishes, sorrows, lullabies, goodbyes, forgiveness, and more. She pulled open one labeled Dreams Lost But Not Forgotten and removed another tiny jar. Inside was a swirl of soft violet mist. Would you like to see another? She asked. Eliah hesitated, then nodded. She handed it to him. Again, the world shifted. He stood at the edge of a quiet lake, its surface shimmering like glass. Moonlight poured down in beams, and on the opposite bank stood a boy, maybe a few years older than Eliah, playing a wooden flute. The song was gentle and sad. Eliah recognized it. It was the song he used to hum when he couldn't sleep, though he'd long forgotten where he'd first heard it. The boy played until the moon dipped low, and then he whispered to the lake, I'm sorry I left. I didn't know how to stay. And the water whispered back, you were always welcome. Then the memory faded. Eliah blinked. Back in the cottage, the violet mist inside the jar had cleared. He looked at the rainkeeper. Who was that, my brother? She smiled slow and soft. Your dream of him. Oh, I never had a brother, Eliah said. Not in this world, she replied. But once when your heart was smaller, you wished for one. You used to talk to the rain and pretend he was there. That dream lived for a long time. It still does, somewhere inside you. Eliah felt tears again, but this time they were different. Not heavy, not aching, just full. Why are you showing me all this? He asked. The rainkeeper looked at him, her eyes deep as oceans. Oh, because the rain chose you. You listen, those who listen are needed. She walked to a shelf and took down a small wooden box worn smooth from time. Inside was a silver key. She handed it to him. What's it for? There's a door, she said, up beneath the garden. It's old, most don't see it, but if you unlock it, you'll find the Rainroom. Eliah held the key tightly in his hand. It felt cool, yet pulsed softly with warmth, like it knew it had waited for him. Well, what's in the Rainroom? The rainkeeper's smile faded into something more serious. The oldest memory of all. He looked down at the key again, the metal catching the firelight. I don't know if I'm ready. No one ever is, she said gently. But the rain, it prepares us. Drop by drop, outside thunder rumbled softly, not loud or sharp, but deep and distant, like a drum echoing across time. The rainkeeper touched Eliah's shoulder. A rest tonight. Tomorrow when you wake, follow the ivy down beneath the roots. The door will be there." He nodded, suddenly feeling sleep tugging at his eyes. She led him to a small bed tucked beneath a window. The blankets were soft and smelled like lavender and rain. As she tucked them gently around him, she whispered something, words he didn't quite hear but felt settle into his chest. As Eliah drifted towards sleep, the rain continued to fall gently outside. But now it was different. Now every drop held a voice, a face, a forgotten joy. He dreamed of the garden again, and of the Rainroom waiting quietly beneath it all like a heart beneath the soil. And somewhere in the storm, a song began to hum, a lullaby of water, memory, and the boy who listened. Chapter 3. The Rainroom. When Eliah awoke, the world was silent. Not empty, no, never empty, but filled with a kind of hush that only came just before something important. The kind of silence that held its breath. The kind that made you feel like you were inside a story still being written. Outside the cottage, the rain had softened into a mist, light, silvery and strange. It drifted across the grass like memory made visible, curling through the trees and caressing the petals in the rainkeeper's garden. Eliah sat up slowly, the blankets warm around him. His dreams still clung to the edges of his mind. A field of light, a child's laughter, a key that opened not just a door, but something deeper. He looked down. The silver key was still in his hand. It glowed faintly like moonlight through fog. Across the room, the rainkeeper stood by the hearth, stirring a pot that filled the air with the scent of lemon and ginger. She didn't turn. "It's time," she said softly. Eliah rose, heart steady but full. He didn't know what he would find beneath the roots, but he knew he had to go. They didn't speak much as she handed him a cloak made of the same deep green fabric as her own. It fit perfectly, as if it had been sewn for him long ago. She pressed a warm piece of honey bread into his hand, kissed his forehead and whispered, "Remember, the rain never gives us what we want. It gives us what we need." Then she opened the door and the morning mist wrapped around him like an invitation. Eliah walked into the garden. The rain had drawn patterns in the soil, spirals and stars, hearts and eyes. The flowers seemed to bow as he passed, their petals shimmering with dew that blinked like tiny crystals. And there, beneath the old willow, was the ivy. It coiled down through the roots like a staircase of green. He followed it, the air growing cooler with each step until the sounds of the world above faded into a deep, echoing silence. At last, he reached it. A wooden door, curved and ancient, sat nestled into the earth itself. It was covered in moss and carvings, tiny swirls and shapes that seemed to move when he wasn't looking directly at them. At its center was a small keyhole shaped like a teardrop. Eliah took the silver key and pressed it in. The door opened with a whisper. The Rainroom wasn't what he expected. It was vast, endless, a cavern made entirely of glass and light. Above him the ceiling stretched high and wide, filled with drifting clouds that glowed with soft, shifting colors, golds and grays. Raindrops hung suspended in the air, falling in slow motion. Some shimmered like silver. Others held tiny flickering images inside. Faces, places, laughter, sorrow. The floor beneath his feet rippled with every step like walking on memory itself. And all around him quiet music played. Not from instruments, but from the rain itself. Every droplet sang it. Together they formed a melody unlike anything he'd ever heard. Eliah stood in the center spinning slowly, mouth open, heart wide. And then he saw it. In the middle of the room stood a tree. Tall and leafless, made of translucent crystal. Each branch held tiny orbs of light, memories, dreams, wishes long abandoned. He walked toward it, drawn by something he couldn't name. As he approached, one of the orbs blinked, unspoke. Eliah. He stopped, the voice was his father's. He hadn't heard it in years, not since the day the rain fell like knives and the world changed forever. Eliah, the voice said again. "It's okay, you can come back now." Tears filled his eyes. "I don't know how," he whispered. "I'm still lost." The tree shimmered, and then the memory opened. He was 10 again, standing in the kitchen. His father was cooking breakfast, humming a tune. Outside, the sky darkened and rain began to fall hard and fast. Thunder cracked and a phone rang. Then silence. Then crying. Then the door slammed and his father was gone. Eliah remembered the way his chest had cracked open that day. He remembered not crying. Not then. Because someone had to be strong. Because rain meant endings. Back in the Rainroom, Eliah dropped to his knees. The sound of the rain deepened, became a heartbeat. The air trembled. The rainkeeper appeared beside him, her hand on his back. "You've carried it for too long," she said. Eliah shook his head. I was scared if I let it go I'd lose everything. You were never meant to carry it alone. She touched the tree gently. The orb faded. Another one blinked into life. This one showed him sitting beneath the willow as a child, talking to the wind. A soft blue flower in his hand, singing to the sky. Who's that? You, she said. Who for the forgetting? He looked up at her. Why do we forget? She smiled sadly. Because we grow. Eliah reached up, touched the orb, and suddenly he wasn't sad. He was full of the boy he used to be, full of the father who tried, full of the laughter, the pain, the silence, the song. He was whole. The Rainroom began to glow brighter. The drops around him moved faster now, their music swelling. The clouds above cracked open, and from them fell light, golden, silver blue, light like memory, light like forgiveness. Eliah stood in the center of it all, hands open, heart wide. He understood now. The rain wasn't sorrow. It was the story of everything. It was the song of all we've been and all we hope to become. Chapter 4. When the rain stops, the storm had passed, not in violence or fury, but in quiet understanding. The clouds didn't break open with lightning or roar with thunder. They softened slowly and let the last drops fall with grace. In the heart of the Rainroom, Eliah stood still, bathed in a gentle glow that radiated from the crystal tree. Around him, the droplets in the air no longer shimmered with sorrow. They glowed with memory, yes, but also with meaning. Amen. With peace, the Rainkeeper stepped forward, her cloak trailing light behind her. We'll have seen what needed to be seen, she said. And now it's time. Eliah turned to her. A time for what? To go back, she said gently. To the world above. To live differently now, with what you've remembered. He looked around the Rainroom, the floating orbs of memories, the pulsing branches of the great glass tree, the eternal rain humming its lullaby, and his heart ached. I don't want to leave, he admitted. She smiled. No one ever does. But this place isn't meant to be a home forever. It's a mirror, a guide, a shelter during the storm. Eliah hesitated. Oh, what if I forget again? You will, she said honestly. But now you know how to return. Rain is your way back. It always will be. She walked him back to the door, where the earth waited quietly. He looked down at the silver key still in his hand. What do I do with it? The Rainkeeper closed his fingers around it. Keep it. Someday someone else may need it, and you'll know when it's time to pass it on. The key post once gently. Then she stepped back, the mist already gathering around her. Goodbye, Eliah. Oh, goodbye, he whispered. She smiled. For now. He stepped through the door, the ivy curled behind him, sealing the passage. He emerged into the garden, where the willow trees swayed softly in the breeze. The rain had stopped. The sky was silver with dawn. Sunlight pale and golden spilled over the leaves, and every flower was crowned with dew. He stood there for a long time, breathing it in, the smell of wet earth, of things beginning again. When he turned toward the cottage, he found it empty. The Rainkeeper's teacups were gone. The fire was out. Her chair was dusted with petals, as though she had never been there, or always had. But the warmth remained, a stillness in the walls, a memory in the air. He smiled. That afternoon, Eliah walked home through puddles that shimmered with tiny reflections, memories now softened by light. When he reached the village, no one asked where he had been, but they noticed something. He walked slower now, like he could hear something others couldn't, like he understood the space between the raindrops. He spent time with people, real time. He asked about their stories. He listened. And when it rained, he never ran for cover. He stood still, eyes closed, heart open, and smiled. Years passed. Eliah grew tall. He planted a garden behind his house, wild and beautiful, filled with blue flowers and silver ivy. He left a bench beneath the willow tree that stood at its center. Sometimes when the sky darkened and thunder rolled low, he would see children there, quiet ones, the kind who listened, and he would offer them tea and stories in a soft blanket while the storm passed. And when they left, he always gave them something small, a flower, a drawing, a silver key. Because the rain would always come, and when it did, someone would need to remember.